Hello, students. Welcome to week four. I am so glad that you're here today. This week, we're going to be focusing on coherence and flow, two skills that are very much separate basic writing from strong college level writing. So basically, when readers say that writing sounds smooth or they say it makes sense, they're usually responding to coherence. And today, that's what we're going to be focusing on. We're going to be focusing on building logical connections, and this way your ideas can move clearly and intentionally. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you and talk with you this week through the PowerPoint. So you should be able to see my screen now. So again, this is week four. I can't believe we're already in week four. So we are a third of the way through. So the first thing I want to talk about is what coherence is. Um, Coherent writing basically means that your ideas connect logically for the reader. That answers questions like, how did we get from sentence A to sentence B? And so some of those key elements include logical order, clear relationships between ideas, and smooth transitions that act as bridges. And so without these, the readers get quite lost in writing. So that being said, want to show you a poorly connected paragraph, and that is a problem. In this case, the sentences are grammatically correct, but they do not feel connected. And there won't be any signals that show cause and effect or comparison or sequence. It kind of feels like a random list, not necessarily a unified paragraph. So I'm going to show you an example of that. So, um, and you'll see that here in just a few minutes. But one of the things I want to talk to you about is why transition words matter. Transitions will guide your reader by signaling relationships between those ideas. Those are things like addition, cause and effect, example, time. They direct readers as to how they should interpret information. For instance, one of my favorite transition words is therefore. That indicates a logical outcome. Something like students experience stress. Therefore, comma, grades may suffer. They are essential for clear and crystal clear communication. So, with that being said, transitioning into the next slide, I have the categories put together for you. These are common transition categories. So, when you're talking about addition, you're going to use words like furthermore, in addition, also, moreover, um, additionally. That's the most common one. When you're talking about cause and effect, you can also use the word therefore. You can use as a result. You can use the word consequently. And oftentimes you can use the word because. One rule of thumb when you are writing, you never want to start a sentence with the word because. If you're writing a contrast assignment or you're asked to do a contrast between two different things, you would use words like however, on the other hand, although. Or you could use the phrase in contrast. Another one that you would probably possibly be looking at is example. And you use this when you're talking in speech quite often. People say, for example, for instance, and sometimes they'll say specifically. If you are writing and you want to give emphasis to something, you'll use words like in fact, indeed, or most importantly. One of the biggest notes that I want to give you is because strong writing is so important. You have to have variety in your sentences. Your sentences can't be short and truncated and very um, small. You want them to be bigger, but not too big. It's finding that right balance. And sometimes if you read them out loud, it will really help you a lot um, in your in your writing practice. So with that being said, relying only on conjunctions such as and, or but can make your writing feel slightly immature very middle school, very high school writing. And while I do teach high school by day, learning to write at a collegiate level is the goal of this class. And so it's critically important that you don't over rely on those particular connecting words. They are okay to use occasionally, but you don't want to over rely on them. Okay, with that being said, um, I'm going to go to this next slide here, and these are common coherence problems that I see just as a teacher, and this is also in your textbook. When students are writing, oftentimes they will do what I call a thought interrupted. Um, and that is when they shift topics randomly. Sometimes they will move to one idea to the next without warning, and there's no logical setup. And that's where the transition words come in. And it really does help to utilize them. And you have a handout in this week's Brightspace content, and it will help you drastically. The second coherence problem that I normally see is repeated beginnings. A lot of students tend to focus on the same word to start every sentence because when it works, it works. But you don't want to do that. As I said in the previous slide, you want to make sure that you have variety in your sentences. So making sure that you don't start every sentence with the same subject or the same pattern is critically important. The third thing that I see is missing signals. When you lack transition words, it fails to yield. It fails to show how ideas relate and come together. And then the fourth thing that I see is unexplained ideas. So sometimes students will start to get ahead of themselves and they'll begin to write and type and they'll get excited about what they're writing about. But they'll, again, like I said, get ahead of themselves and they'll introduce a concept but they won't develop it and they don't link it back. And that's where the transition words come in. And so it is critically important. So I am going to change slides really quickly here. And actually, I'm going to delete this slide. And I'm going to show you when you're looking at a strong example or a weak example, this is a way that you can look at it and analyze your writing. And this is when you read it out loud, when you print it out, when you look at it on the screen. You want to ask yourselves some questions. You want to ask yourselves, how does the author, you, how do you move smoothly between the different perspectives without jumping? Um, are there signal words? Are there signal phrases? Do you have contrast? Is there anything like additionally? Do you have those transition words in your paragraphs? And does your progression seem logical? Does it prevent your paragraph from sounding like a long random cataloging list? And if you don't know what I'm referring to when I say long random cataloging list, one of the things that I have seen the most of in student writing, it's kind of like reading a passage from the Bible, actually, when you're reading someone that is the sister of, brother of, cousin of, mother of, um, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on. And so structure becomes really, really, really important. So with that being said, I am going to stop this screen share and I'm going to show you a couple of things. Um, if I can find it here. Go back to my Zoom. Still working out all the kinks here. So I'm going to share screen. And here we go. You should be able to see this on your screen. And again, you can play back this video as many times as you want. But I do want to show you this example paragraph. This example paragraph, the first one I have highlighted in yellow, and the second one I have highlighted in green. But I'm going to read you the paragraph out loud and let you see the first one. And then we're going to talk it through and we're going to look at it. So in the first one, and I chose the same topic that you'll be writing about this week, which is the importance of seeing multiple perspectives. So in this first example, this does come from a student example from the past. I've changed, obviously, anonymized everything, so you don't see names or anything like that. But It says, seeing multiple perspectives is important in society. People have different opinions about issues. Some people agree and some people disagree. This can cause arguments. People should try to understand each other. It is good to listen to others. Society would be better if people understood different viewpoints. There are many examples of this in everyday life. So, in that first paragraph, I want you to ask yourself, first of all, how did that sound when I read it out loud? Is this a strong example paragraph or is this a weak example paragraph? What's missing if it is a weak one? Well, let's look at it. In this particular paragraph, you are missing transitions between the ideas. Your sentences are short. The sentences are choppy. Each sentence stands alone rather than building on the previous one. So think of it like that bridge that's being built. The ideas are repetitive. The ideas are general. There's no specific examples, no specific development. There's no clear cause and effect structure. There's no logical progression to this. And so this is a weak model. And I'm going to use a transition phrase. As a result, the paragraph reads like a list of statements instead of a unified argument or a unified perspective. And that is problematic. So that's why I always recommend reading things out loud. Now, as you go into the second paragraph, I'm going to read that one out loud and see if you can hear the difference between the first one and the second one. Seeing multiple perspectives is essential in a diverse society because it encourages critical thinking and reduces unnecessary conflict. When individuals consider viewpoints different from their own, they gain a broader understanding of complex issues. For example, debates about school policies often reveal how students, parents, and administrators approach the same topic with different priorities. As a result, recognizing these differences can lead to a more balanced and thoughtful solution. In addition, listening carefully to opposing perspectives promotes empathy and mutual respect. Consequently, communities that value multiple viewpoints are better equipped to solve problems collaboratively. Therefore, developing the ability to see issues from more than one angle strengthens both personal growth and civic responsibility. So, as you can tell, I have highlighted some things in green, but the second paragraph is much stronger than the first, not only due to length, but it also has clear transition words. You have the transition words here, for example, you have as a result, you have in addition, you have consequently, you have therefore. And each sentence, as a result of using those transition words, builds on the previous ideas. And so it creates that clear chain of reasoning, that clear bridge to each connecting thoughts. There are specific examples, and the explanation of those examples is there. The cause and effect structure strengthens the coherence, and the concluding sentence reinforces the central claim. So, overall, this paragraph not only meets length requirements, but it also guides the reader step by step through a unified and well developed argument. And so, I think it's really important when you are looking at good writing is to also see bad writing examples. So I am going to go ahead and upload this as well to Brightspace so that you have that as an example to refer to as you're working through your assignments this week. But I did want to make sure that I pointed that out to you. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and go back into Brightspace for you so that you can see this week's assignments. I guess I'm trying to minimize Zoom and that's not working for me. So give me just 1 second here. And your slides that I have on the slideshow where it says week example, that refers to this handout. So I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that I put in there, see handouts on your PowerPoint. So I'm typing as I speak, like I was last week. I'm going to go back to share the screen so that I can go into Brightspace. I did want to also let you know as well that I will be getting caught up on the grading this weekend. It's been a pretty crazy and chaotic week for me, but I will definitely get you your feedback as quickly as possible. So going to content, we're going to go into week 4. I do want to point out a couple of things. So I got a couple of emails last week. For your assignments, if your assignment is not showing up for you, it is because there is a restriction attached to it that you must view all the content in the module before you can attempt the assignment. And that is really to prevent people from trying to rush through the assignments without completing the content. As this is an online class, and I'm not meeting with you one-on-one in person and teaching you the lessons in person, modeling the writing on the whiteboard or using a document camera, but rather showing it to you on the screen, it is imperative that you view the content, that you view the PowerPoint, that you watch the videos, that you are looking at the handouts, and that you're reading the excerpts that I'm giving you. And this isn't directed at everyone, but I just want to make sure that you are aware of the importance of looking at your Brightspace content from week to week, and making sure that you are doing all of the required things in the modules. And once you've done that, you should see a check mark next to everything. Once all those check marks are completed, then you can attempt the assignment. That does include your weekly grammar practice as well. With that being said, as we go into week 4, you see our weekly objectives for the week, and that is to identify weak transitions and coherence issues in writing, and to be able to effectively utilize transition words and phrases to improve paragraph flow, and to revise a poorly connected paragraph by incorporating stronger transitions, and to analyze a passage for how an author maintains coherence and logical progression of ideas. So those are our weekly objectives for week 4. As I go back to it, and remember, if you ever get lost, you can always click on your Brightspace icon or the week, and it'll take you into where you're going. I have the PowerPoint presentation that I just went over with you. That is already uploaded. Your excerpt is from The Danger of a Single Story, and it is a fantastically wonderful excerpt. Really tells you a lot about the author and her own story. Um, there is a TED Talk from The Danger of a Single Story. If you're interested in listening to and or reading the entire thing, I highly recommend it because it really is a fantastic and wonderful um, short TED Talk. It's not any longer than 10 or 15 minutes, but it really does give you some background into the importance of being able to see multiple perspectives. And I've designed this course deliberately so that we are looking at things from multiple different perspectives. I have a handout here for transition. So if you are anything like me, I am very much all about being hands-on and having paper and writing things down and taking notes. I always recommend taking notes from the PowerPoints from week to week, and doing all of your assignments. And I'm a very organized, very type A type person. So with this handout, if you have a printer, you could print out this handout so that you have it. I have students that have been in 0026 that are all the way in 1102 now, and they have kept this handout and utilized this handout throughout their journey in English classes at South Florida State College. Excuse me. Your grammar practice of coherence and flow is this week. I have to change the date, so I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. Because again, as I told you from the get-go, that um, things things for sure always change with me. Um, and I am editing this class from week to week. So this will be due on March the 4th next week. And as always, your assignments will end on the same date that they are due, but you have until 11:59 on the Wednesday that they are due. So you should see the updated dates for your grammar practice. And the grammar practice is on coherence and flow and is all about transition words this week. And then your writing notebook entry 4. Now, as we go into week 5, which you'll be seeing the video for that soon, as we go into week 5 is where I'm going to introduce the digital portfolio assignment, which is a very important part of this class, where you can keep and see your journey of writing throughout the course and be able to keep your documents in a secure file. And that way, when the course ends, you don't lose access because I really feel that it's important for you to be able to look back on your journey as a writer from the very beginning of the course to the end of the course. And then as you progress in your educational pursuits, you'll be able to see where you were when you started to where you end when you finish. But that's all for next week. But for this week, your writing notebook entry is all about why it is important to see multiple perspectives. Now, I'm going to go ahead and click on this. I'm on the teacher view. But basically, you're going to look at what Chiamanda Adichie says in her Danger of a Single Story TED Talk. She explains how hearing only one side of a story creates misunderstandings and stereotypes. And we've talked about stereotypes, and you've done some reading about stereotypes and responded to some writing notebook entries regarding that over the past 3 weeks. You're going to write a clear and organized response where you're going to evaluate at least two perspectives on the issue that you identified in the first week using Adichie's concept of the single story. And so these are the requirements and what I'll be looking at when I evaluate it with the rubric. I'm going to look to make sure A, it's an MLA format. Um, B, that you begin with a topic sentence that clearly states your main idea. One of the things I ask you to remember is that this is academic writing. And so you need to keep that in mind. You need to support your idea with at least two specific examples and or reasons. Because you're an emerging writer, this is the one class that I'm not super strict about using personal pronouns in. Once you get into 1101, then you'll have to train yourself out of using personal pronouns. But I am asking you about your own personal experiences. And so I'm the only one that sees it and comments on it. Not everyone does. And so it's not something that you have to worry about anyone else seeing. Um, I'm also going to be looking for the fact that you use at least 3 transition words to connect your ideas and not randomly placed. Make sure that they are placed intentionally, that they connect the ideas, that they are that bridge that I was talking about in the PowerPoint that connects everything together. And then to end with a concluding sentence. And one of the biggest things that I ask of my students is not to use the words in conclusion, because I'm trying to get you out of that habit. And when you're younger and you're trained as a writer, your elementary school teachers, middle school teachers, and even some high school teachers, from my experience, have taught their students to use those 2 words. But there are many other words that are so much better than in conclusion. And I talked about that a little bit in the PowerPoint. So I would urge you to make sure that you are utilizing um, other words to um, conclude your response. I do want to add that the responses need to be a minimum of 6 to 8 sentences. I realize a lot of you are working adults and you don't have a lot of time on your hands, but I'm going to also urge you to not procrastinate and to start on these as soon as possible, just because you don't want to let time get away from you. And I speak from experience because I myself have procrastinated on assignments. So I completely understand working full time and trying to do schoolwork because I'm also a student myself. With that being said, at the bottom of your instructions for your writing notebook, remember you cannot view this assignment until you have completed all of the requirements for the module and viewed them and went through them. And so it's not going to show up until then. But I also have given you um, the transition words that I would like to see you use. But again, you also have the handout that you could refer to. But we have to add information, to give examples, to show cause and effect, to contrast ideas. And notice I have to conclude here, I've got ultimately, overall, and to summarize. So again, you won't be able to see that until you actually get into week 4. and you complete all of the modules. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen here and double check everything and make sure that you do not have a quiz this week. And you may have a quiz this week, so let me just triple check here um, to see if you have a quiz. And you do. So you do have a quiz on transition words, flow, and coherence. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up and change the date for you. So it's going to be due on, again, March the 4th. So it's going to start at 12:01 and then it will close on March the 4th at 11:59. It'll be due at 11:30. So just make sure that you do complete your quizzes and get that completed. And it's only the one quiz this week, and then you have your writing notebook entry. Other than that, I think that's everything I have for you this week. But I do certainly hope that you have a great week. One of the things I want to add is that you need to make sure that you are checking before you submit. Make sure that you are checking for coherence, make sure you're checking for structure. I can't recommend it enough reading things out loud because coherence is structure. It guides your reader step by step. So before you submit your draft, check it for logical order. Check to make sure you have varied transitions. Make sure that your ideas link together because the flow controls the way the reader perceives things. Anyway, if you have any questions, as usual, I'm going to direct you to reach out to me. Don't hesitate to email me. Don't hesitate to send me a text. I do have class on Thursday evenings from 6 p.m. until 10 p.m. So I usually don't answer my phone during that time, but I am available to text as long as it's not after 9 p.m. During the school day, of course, I am teaching all day long, but I would be happy to answer it as soon as the school day is over. So if you have any further questions, reach out to me. Send me an email. I do check my email every day. If you haven't heard from me within 48 hours, then please, by all means, send me a text and say, hey, Mrs. Wood, I sent you an email and you haven't answered me yet. Other than that, I hope you guys have a fantastic and wonderful work week and week 4. Um, I hope that you are able to build wonderful and fantastic logical connections in your writing. I hope that you enjoy the reading this week, and I look forward to reading your responses and engaging with you as well. Have a fantastic week.